Before I start anything, thank you all very much for 2,000 subscribers. I appreciate all of you, and I'm very happy that I have a formula here that people enjoy to watch. Anyway, enjoy the video. EMD has made a lot of locomotives, and it's more than 70 years of building locomotives for North American railroads, and they've had ups and downs. Timeless classics like the SD40, and spectacular failures like the SD50 and SD90.
You forgot something!
All these units, reliable and not, had a place in the locomotive market when they were built. The SD40 was used for general pulling, the SD50 was an upgraded SD40, and the SD90 was a part of the great horsepower race in the 1990s, soaring off against GE's AC6000, which admittedly was extremely entertaining. Each of these units had a purpose and a buyer in mind when they were being designed. Coming back to the SD40 was not just a one-off diesel, rather a family of different units. The SD40 family was meant to replace their older diesel units, they being EMD, that used the EMD 567 prime mover with the EMD 645 prime mover, which was better in basically every aspect. EMD released 4 units with their new prime mover, starting with the SD38, which uses the same 16-cylinder engine as the SD40, but lacks a supercharger, therefore producing 2,000 horsepower instead of the SD40's 3,000. On the other end of the spectrum, there's the 20-cylinder SD45, producing 3,600 horsepower, whose internals rather famously would rip itself to shreds with its own crankshaft, trying to accommodate the higher power produced by the extra 4 cylinders. And then, awkwardly in the middle, there's the SD39, which uses a 12-cylinder engine with a turbocharger, producing 2,300 horsepower. Externally, the SD39 is almost identical to the SD40, with one difference being on the roof. The SD39 has 4 radiator fans on the rear of the roof, meanwhile the SD40 has 5, but still, extremely similar engines. The SD38 had a place as a road switcher road power hybrid of sorts and sold about 108 units, mostly to Brazil and Penn Central.
50 years of great railroading, the Penn Central!
The SD45 as a higher horsepower model actually sold quite well despite its crankshaft issues, selling 1,260 units from 1965 to 1971, with the Southern Pacific purchasing a beautifully round number of 317 units. An extra 136 units was produced from 1972 to 1974, this time with Dash 2 specs, to upgrade the internals of the original SD45 designated as the SD45-2, almost all of which going to the Santa Fe. But when we look at the SD39, there's very little orders of this unit to speak of. 54 SD39s were built from 1968 to 1970. EMD cataloged the SD39-2, but got 0 orders whatsoever, largely because no one asked for it and no one wanted it. Compared to the SD40, the price of the SD39 was about the same, the fuel consumption was also about the same, but it produced 700 less horsepower, so there was basically no reason for railroads to choose the SD39 over the SD40. There's just no point in doing that. 6 SD39s were sold to the Illinois terminal, and then hot potatoed from the ITC to the Norfolk and Western, and then ended up at the Guilford rail system, which is how this model happens. I've owned this Guilford SD39 in N&W black for a few months, and it certainly looks nice. Athearn released these last year, I believe, and I decided to buy one. I'm getting off track though, so back to the real unit. The SD39s that did exist, as far as I can see, all survived at least until the 21st century. The units weren't bad, they were just so unbelievably uninteresting, and that's why I find them interesting. There's absolutely nothing unique about these units. They were objectively worse units than their competitors, and even its own family of units, and yet they ran for over 40 years. The story of the SD39 is a lot less interesting than, for example, the SD45, mostly because the SD39 served for such a long time and were extremely unproblematic, meaning they didn't have crankshaft issues or other outstanding issues like the SD45 did. The SD39s may all be scrapped now, but for a time, trains were pulled by slightly shittier SD40s, and they were damn near pointless, and they should be appreciated for that. Alrighty, time to wrap this video up. What's that sound? Oh no! The EMD STL39 is a locomotive specifically requested by
The Milwaukee Road
to replace their aging Alco RSC-2s, so the result was this, a slightly smushed ST39. These units would be used for road switching, produced from 1969 to 1972. Only 10 were built, all for our favorite orange railroad in the general O Block area. As the Milwaukee Road was bought by the Sioux Line, and the 9 SDL39s, one was scrapped after a wreck, would serve with the Sioux for a while. Then, before long, they served with the Wisconsin Central, and then the Wisconsin Central merged with the Canadian National, and then the SDL39s were deemed not necessary to the CN, so they were sold to one of the many freight railroads of Chile, where they continue to pull freight to this day. A rather fitting end to the uninteresting story of the SD39. The SD39 will probably continue to be forgotten in history because of how uninteresting and forgettable it is, but hopefully with this video, it'll be slightly less forgotten about. Thank you for watching everyone, and I hope everything you're waiting for has high greens. See you later.